What? Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. Tonight, I bring you guys the most confusing Reverb listing I've seen in a long time. Now, no hate to the guy. I'm sure a lot of this is just bad information has been fed to him, guitar stories have been crossed, but it was just so hilarious. We need to go over this and correct this listing for him. 1975 Gibson Custom Shop Flying V Les Paul. So much wrong. Let's just look at this. Okay, so we've got some sort of a Flying V. It's an 84 style Flying V, meaning you have this style of a layout. This is the shred metal style V. It didn't come out till 1984, so that's one thing I already got against this guy's title. It literally cannot be in 1975 because this did not exist yet. Not in this layout anyways. The standard 67 style one, definitely, yeah, that existed. Technically the Korina ones existed if you had a 50s original one as well. But this is what a Flying V would look like at this point in time in current production. It would actually still have a pick guard on it. Whereas this one, there is no pick guard. That's part of the look as well. The Nashville style bridge has been modified to something else. I'm not quite sure what those things are called. And you've got a regular tailpiece. The 84 style one ships stock with something called Dirty Fingers pickups. You can tell if that still has it or not because they have a double row of pole pieces. Zooming in here, this does not have that. So that means somebody's replaced our pickups. Okay. But what about this finish? Have you guys ever seen a purple burst Gibson? Especially a dark one. And on the back side of it, even on the neck and the headstock? That has to be a refinish, right? No, that's actually a real color. It's called Night Violet. Everybody just calls it Purple Burst nowadays, but the official color is Night Violet, and this is a custom shop edition decal guitar. Even if the body wasn't right and it was like a normal 75 style Flying V, this decal right here, you will not see that on a guitar until the very earliest of 1982, unless somebody added it afterwards. It's knowledge like that that helped me identify my Hippo guitar as being like a new old stock parts type thing being built at the Gibson factory. But in this photo, we can also see a serial number ending in 577, so that makes it a Nashville guitar. The 5 right here definitely means there's an 8 somewhere around here to make it a 1985, and at least the 73rd day. So what I'm guessing has happened here, in order to make this seller think it's a 75, is maybe the first 2 digits of the serial number are actually missing, like the stamp just didn't go into the wood enough. So he took 735577, plugged it into a serial number decoder, such as like Guitar Data right here. Well, that got us 97 or 2007. Okay, so scratch that. So since that theory of missing some digits and plugging it into a calculator didn't work out right, is this just a typo that has been put over this entire ad? Did he mean to put 1985 and then just accidentally put 75 for absolutely everything? That would make sense because this digit right here means it has to be 85 because in 75 that style serial number didn't exist. In 95 they didn't make a V that looked like this. So that's a potential. Maybe he was just going off of the story that he's remembering if he's owned this guitar for a long time, or the story of the original owner of this thing. So we've got it pretty well narrowed down here as a 1985 Night Violet Flying V, which is a very cool guitar. I've been looking for one of these in very clean shape. I'll show you that here in a minute. I found a really cool one. So we know what this guitar is at this point in time, right? But he's called it a Flying V Les Paul. So is that just keyword abuse, or is there a little bit more to his story? Because he's asking quite a bit for this thing, being as heavily modified as it is. I mean, in this configuration, all original, you know, maybe $3,000, $3,500. People wouldn't bat too much of an eye at that. It looks like somebody's also replaced our truss rod cover here. And there's likely some sort of a crack in the top. That's the only reason why somebody would add this big washer over top of the output on this particular one. It's either that or they just wanted to give it Korina V style. But generally, that gets put there because there's a crack in the top. Let's read here. 1975 Gibson Custom Shop Les Paul Flying V. Custom shop in this case, actually it's not custom shop like we think of it today, that did not exist until late 1993. That just means it was a special limited edition run guitar that got a special finish or was custom ordered. So he says the serial number dates this guitar to 1975. We've already disproved that. But he continues on to say, in that year, Gibson didn't produce any of the standard Flying Vs. No. However, the custom shop made several of the Les Paul models using a Flying V body style. What? He's telling me that this is actually a Les Paul. The only thing I could possibly think he might be getting his stories crossed on here is when SGs were still called Les Pauls. You know, that whole 61 to like 63-ish, where what we call today an SG was called a Les Paul. That is literally the only thing I could think of because, I mean, the custom shop didn't formally exist at this point in time. Les Pauls and Flying Vs never shared their body. I am just so confused. Let's continue on. The guitar and neck is solid mahogany and the tuners are Grovers. Okay, he's got the tuners right. I guess it's possible this could be mahogany by 85, but a lot of these were alder or other various woods. Says the hardware's gold plated. I agree with that. It looks like somebody's even swapped out our pickup rings to be golden. Probably brass. The story continues on that the finish is in excellent condition, except for a little wear and tear on the top backside of the headstock. Okay. There's a small body crack on the right shoulder near where the neck meets the body. It was professionally repaired long ago and is nearly invisible. So naturally, I want to see this repaired crack on the side of the neck. Like, he's talking this area. That is pretty common for movement to happen on these style Flying Vs. When I had first read that, I thought he was going to be talking about the top, but no, he wasn't. But unfortunately, no photos of that. And we've got some weird scratches going around our tuning pegs. So, unfortunately, this was not some weird custom-ordered mid-70s Flying V that was done up in purple, like I first thought when I read this title before clicking on this. But at the end of the day, how much is this guitar actually worth in this market, in this condition? Assuming it has some sort of an actual heel repair, all the parts are pretty much non-original at this point in time, besides maybe the tuners. I think $2,000 would be generous with a repair, and that's only because it's got the cool night violet finish. So unfortunately, this price point doesn't really make sense for us. But now, let me share you guys a really cool one. Well, I guess since we're talking about these, before we do that, here's what this guitar would have looked like originally, without any of the modifications. Another night violet finish. Looks like we've got those dirty fingers I was talking about, the double roll pole pieces. Ebony fretboard on this one, potentially. Sometimes the rosewoods are just really dark in this era. And it's just an all-around good-looking guitar. It's even got the bursts on the sides. And here you can see it on the back of the neck. A lot of these will have the Schaller style tuners though, with the Gibson branding. So that one having Grovers is actually kind of a big deal and was probably part of why it was a custom shop edition. But generally, your serial numbers are much easier to read like that. But check this one out, listed by Grinning Elk Music. This guy always has some pretty cool stuff, but this is an XPL variant. So everything else is pretty much the same on the body, right? Except for this one just happens to be a Kahler variation. But the XPL means you have the Explorer headstock. That mixed with the night violet finish is just so absolutely stunning. If this would have been a stop bar tailpiece variety, I probably just would have bought it. $3,200 isn't that much for this particular guitar. Oh man, it's even on the sides of the headstock. That's cool. But anyways, I nearly made an exception on this one because the XPL with this finish, I mean, it really does pull off the Kahler trem system incredibly well. And this one is just so ridiculously clean. Like, it's got some wear and tear and it's got some finish checking on it, as you would expect, but it's been cleaned up. It's just beautiful. You even get a little bit of a burst here by your serial number. And has an original Kahler Flyer system printout, which you don't see every day. But if there's a guitar that screams 80s, it's this one. And all things considered, that is not a bad price. It would not surprise me if somebody buys this after watching this video. But this is kind of like what Dave Mustaine's new Flying V EXP guitars is reissued in a roundabout way. But I've definitely been on the lookout for something exactly like this in stop bar variety. And here's another cool guitar I wanted to feature with you guys. So whenever I talk about Batwing SGs, I generally bring up the movie School of Rock, because that's a slightly earlier memory of mine, like before I even knew anything about guitars, of when I would see an SG. So did you know that they actually did Jack Black signed guitars for this movie? One of these just recently showed up. It was kept in new old stock condition for all this time. But I think the one that he used in the movie was actually a true late 60s one. It's been a while since I've seen it. So if he would have used an early 2000s iteration in the movie, I probably would have been all over this thing. But this thing has a special collector's edition School of Rock DVD in it that all the other cast members signed, and then Jack actually signed the guitar. So it's got all of that, and being a fan of that movie and everything that it represents, this was very tempting to buy. I mean, mint condition, $22.50. That's kind of expensive for a 2003 standard SG. I mean, generally you can pick something like this up for around $1,000. But man, if that Jack Black signature would have been flipped 180 degrees, maybe I could have been convinced, because that's just kind of a cool piece of history. But apparently they did a few of these as a promotional thing. That could have been cool in my like future guitar museum or something. But unfortunately it sold rather quickly, so I didn't even get enough time to think about it. And then speaking of tempting purchases, our last topic for tonight is this: a potential dealer trophy display / paperweight presentation award, as they call it. So I have seen these before, and I think I featured them in Rock or Not episodes. Basically, if you were a really good Gibson dealer or a various award ceremony thing, occasionally Gibson would take their seconds guitars, and they would just saw them off right here, put them on a trophy plaque, and then hand them out, like if you sold a whole bunch of Les Pauls or anything. Nowadays, it's really interesting because these things still have serial numbers on them. So, in theory, if you bought a guitar that needed a brand new headstock and you wanted to keep it Gibson original, you could look around for one of these things, cut this off, and then graft it onto your other guitar. Because generally they're pretty affordable. Now this one's $300. It was tempting because you also have to remember this has some parts on it. I mean, we've got a Les Paul truss rod cover here, which I think I actually have one of those. I never knew what it came off of. Maybe it was one of these? It's hard to tell, but I doubt that's worth too much money because there's not many models that actually had that stock. And then the tuners, you can tell that this is a early 2000s era one. Looks like maybe 2005 by the serial number, if I'm reading that correctly. So these really aren't worth much more than $20-$30. So you really are paying a premium for the quarter neck here, because there's not much you can part out of this one. So as a memorabilia piece, I'm sure that's worth that to somebody. Or if like what we were talking about, to restore a guitar, that's well worth it if you wanted to keep an original Gibson serial number on your guitar. Or I guess, I mean, if we're being real here, it would be well worth it for a scammer to buy it and have a serial number. So I guess you got to be careful who you sell these things to. But I thought I'd let you guys know there is one of those available on Reverb. Or if somebody wanted to buy it for me as a nice late Christmas present, I would gladly accept it. All right, troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed tonight's episode. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will catch you tomorrow on the next episode. Take care.